Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole and I like to do fashion DIYs, and today's video is extra special because this is the first digital pattern I am releasing and I am so excited. This is something I have been working on behind the scenes and something that I've been really wanting to do for quite some time now, and I have finally taken all the steps to finally be here in front of this camera telling you guys that I have released my very first pattern on Etsy. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit easier for me with no sizing, no grading, just a little one size fits all pattern, which is this little mini backpack that I actually made a few years ago. This is my backpack out of Lululemon Shoppers, and I loved this pattern so much that I finally took the time to digitize it and now test it, and now here we are ready to release it. And I will actually leave the original tutorial down below in case you want to actually make this exact bag, but in today's video I'm actually going to be using a different material. I didn't want to do the exact same tutorial twice, so I am going to be using a denim material to make my bag. And for your convenience, I will definitely have everything time-stamped down below so you can skip through to the parts that you want to watch. And since this is a digital pattern, please be sure to test print your pattern. My best advice is to just print the first page that has the scale on it, which is 2 inches. That way you can measure it once you print it to make sure it equals up to 2 inches. That way you know that your bag is going to be the right size and the right measurements. And before we get into the video, I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody who has followed me, and if you are interested in trying out this pattern, it would really mean a lot to me if you would give it a go and send me your final project photos. I would love to see what you guys create. I would love to have a cute little sewing community, so please, if you try this pattern out, please be sure to tag me so I can see what you create, and please be sure to follow along and subscribe because I definitely have more patterns that I will be releasing, specifically clothing patterns. I just kind of wanted to soft launch with something that was a little bit easier. Enough with the rambling, let's get into the tutorial.
The pattern when printed is a total of 12 pages. I don't trim all the sides of the paper, I only trim off the left side and the bottom of the paper, that way there is some overlap when taping. I will go ahead and tape every row now before taping the rows together. Once the pattern is assembled, it's time to cut. Now that my pattern is ready, let's go over the other supplies you will need. 2 Tri-Glide buckle slides, 1 yard of 1 inch thick webbing. This webbing was actually too thick, so you'll see me use black webbing in the tutorial. 2.5 yards of bias tape. I used 2 different colors of bias tape for my project. The yellow is for the inside and the black is for the outside pocket. Some sort of padding for the backpack. You only need a small amount. 2 6-inch zippers for the pockets and 1 18-inch two-way zipper for the bag opening. Depending on your fabric of choice, you might want to use some interfacing to add some structure. I only use interface on the pattern pieces indicated with an asterisk. Half a yard of a heavyweight material. I used non-stretch denim and half a yard of lining fabric. And lastly, I have a bit of heavyweight cotton that I'll be using for my backpack straps. Then the cutting begins. Truthfully, the cutting part of any project is so boring to me, but it's important to take your time and make sure that all of your notches and drill holes are marked. Finally, once all my pieces have been cut, I moved on to serging all my pieces. This step isn't fully necessary since there'll be no exposed edges visible when the bag is done, but I just personally like the look and feel of clean edges. I also pressed my interfacing to my interior fabric and serged around the edges to hold it into place. Now we are finally ready to start constructing this bag. Starting with the front pocket, I'm going to take the front pocket pattern piece and sew one of my small zippers right sides together. Flip the zipper over and top stitch the zipper in place to help it lay flat. Then I will sew the pocket flap to the other side of the zipper. I then moved the zipper to the inside of my bag before securing the sides to enclose the zipper. I then sewed a top stitch to the zipper flap to keep it in place. Now it's time to sew the sides of the pocket. I'm going to sew all of the sides together to create a rectangle. Then I'm going to pin the side piece to the front of the bag right sides together, making sure I am folding the pocket sides the same on both sides to look like this. When sewing the corners, I make sure to pivot once I got to 3/8 of an inch to the edge. before turning my fabric and just catching the corner as I sew, and I repeated this for all 4 sides. Then I clipped off the excess of the zipper and my corners. To finish the edge, I'm going to be adding black bias tape. I pinned and sewed to the edge of the pocket. You can also do this as a basting stitch and take it out after the pocket is secured to the front of the bag. I am now pinning the pocket to the front of my bag, using the drill holes as a guide. I also measured the distance around the sides to ensure my pocket was centered. Then I sewed it in a matching black thread to secure the pocket onto my bag. Then I grabbed a lining piece, then sewed it onto the back of the bag front. So now the front of my bag is complete, and we are going to be moving on to the sides of the bag. Starting with the zipper panel pieces, I placed the zipper and my denim fabric right sides together, then added my lining piece right side down and pinned before sewing it into place. Then I added the other zipper panel to the other side, matching the center notches. Then I added a top stitch to either side of the zipper. Since I am using contrasting fabric, I'm going to be using matching threads, so I am just using a different color thread in the bobbin versus my spool. Now I am going to attach the bottom part of the side, attaching right sides together for the denim and right sides together for the lining, then sewed the pieces together. Then I trimmed off the excess zipper and added a top stitch to both sides. Now moving on to the backpack straps. I sewed the strap fabric right sides together, then pulled the sides apart and moved the seam to the center and pressed the strap flat. I marked 1.5 inches up and 1/2 inch over to draw a new sew line before sewing both sides. I trimmed off the excess, then trimmed the same corners on the padding pieces. I took a piece of 2.5-inch webbing and weaved it through one side of the adjustable slider. Then I placed that into the strap and secured it with a stitch. I added my padding over the top of the strap and tacked the bottom ends together. Then I rolled down the strap side until it covered the strap completely. Keep fiddling with it until it lays flat, and add a stitch going through the back seam to keep the padding in place, and repeat the same thing for the other strap. You can also see that I forgot to trim the excess on the inside on one of them, so the corners are not as sharp. This is a reminder to trim all your corners before turning to reduce bulk. Now we are moving on to the back of the backpack, and we are starting with the lining. I'm going to be adding a lining zipper, so I need my 2 lining pocket bags and a 6-inch zipper. I'll be cutting this one down to size. I'm going to go back to my pattern piece and draw this little box right here. This is for the zipper. Then I'm going to take this pocket piece and pin it to the back of my lining, matching the center notches, and sewed along that rectangular box I just drew out. Then I drew a line down the middle, stopping 1/2 inch before the edge, and drew a line towards each corner. Then I went in with my scissors and cut down those lines. Then it was time to turn the pocket side towards the inside. I used clips to help it from sliding before pinning the opening to my zipper tape and sewing around the opening. Then I just trimmed off the excess and attached the back side of my pocket. I then clipped the fabric in place before sewing. And now my little lining pocket is complete. Now it's time to sew the lining to the denim bag. Now we have our back, front, straps, and side of the bag complete. To place my straps, I measure out 1.5 inches on either side of the center notch and pin my straps on a slight angle so it would feel more comfortable when wearing, and stitch them down, and then trimmed off the excess. I then cut out a 7-inch piece of webbing. This will be the handle, and I took the remaining webbing that I had left. Ideally, I wish I had longer pieces, but I only had enough to cut 2 10-inch pieces, and pinned these to the bottom corners diagonally, tacking them into place. And now comes the trickiest part in this whole project, which is the final assembly. This part can get difficult because of the multiple layers of fabric the machine has to work through. I highly recommend using a walking foot when working with thicker fabrics. I start the process by matching the notches from the top of the bag around the curve towards the bottom, pushing any excess fabric to the corner of the bag because I'm going to pinch the excess and sew it to create a clean, flat bottom edge. Then to sew that in place, I found it easier to sew it from one side right off the edge. Then go back to where I left off and keep sewing. I try to demonstrate it with contrasting thread. It's okay to take your time with this part. I have to oftentimes re-sew certain parts of the curve because it will shift on me during the sewing process. But taking the extra time here to fix it will be so worth it in the end. So this is how it's looking so far, and it is very important to open up the bag before sewing the back piece together so you have a way of flipping the bag right side out. And now you will just need to repeat the same process on the other side and sew the back and the side seams together. Once that is done, we are now going to cover all of these ugly exposed edges with the yellow bias tape. And then it's finally time to flip it right side out. And the very final step is to thread the webbing through the other end of the slider and double fold the ends and secure it with a tack so it doesn't slide out. And now the bag is complete.
Okay, here is the final look of the bag, and it is so cute. I definitely would just tweak the amount of webbing I use because I accidentally bought the wrong webbing. I actually didn't have enough for the straps, so I just made do. But when you're making this, I would definitely recommend adding a longer piece of webbing. That way you have more room for the adjustable strap. But because I'm a small person, it's fine. It hits at a pretty good height for me. I would maybe make it a little bit longer if I had more webbing, but that's the beauty about making your own bags. It's always adjustable. And of course, the best part of this bag is the inside. For me, it's the best part, is the fact that it is so bright and colorful in there. I love how finished and clean the inside looks, and I'm not really worried about anything spilling because I used that kind of water resistant material. So that's it for the mini backpack tutorial, and I hope you guys enjoyed this and it was easy enough to follow along. Please let me know in the comments what you think, and be sure to subscribe to check out what pattern I will be dropping next, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!